Rainbow Warrior here, and today I'm going to show you how to make this double knitted scarf. If you've never heard of double knitting before, it's a very cool technique that's going to allow us to have a knitted look on both sides of our scarves, have a reversible color design, and our scarf will lay nice and flat. So I'm going to show you how to do this technique. To begin, we're going to need two different colors of yarn, two different strands, and we're going to tie a slip knot with both of our yarns. So just like you normally would, but use both strands, and leave a long tail because we're doing a long tail cast on. And you're going to do the exact same steps as if you only had one strand of yarn. So just ignore the fact that you have two different colors and just do the same steps. So go under your thread by your thumb and then by your pointer, pull through. And just don't worry about if your yarn's getting twisted because we can fix that when we start knitting. So I'm casting on 14 stitches for my scarf, but you can obviously cast on however many stitches you want for your project. And as always, if you need help determining how many stitches you need to do depending on your materials and your gauge, the link to my written pattern will be below in the description bar, so that way you can determine how many stitches you want to do for your project. I make my scarves kind of a medium thickness. I don't like it to be too thick for when you wrap around your neck, but I know some people do like really bulky thick scarves. So again, make sure to check out my pattern, which will tell you everything about materials and measurements. Alright, here we can see all of our color strands, and just take notice as to generally what color comes first, because that's what I'm going to choose to start with, and for me that's red. And we're going to start by knitting the first stitch with both strands of yarn, and you're going to do this throughout your project for your first and your last stitch. It's going to keep your project nice and tight and give you a uniformed border. So knit both of those stitches together, and now I'm going to start with my red. So I'm only going to go into my red stitch, and I'm going to simply knit with my red yarn. So rather than thinking of right side and wrong side here, we're thinking of red side and blue side, or whatever colors you have. So take both strands of yarn, not just the blue, and now you're going to purl with your blue yarn. It's important that you move both strands of yarn back and forth when you do this technique. And again, so since we're on the red side, we're knitting the reds, and then we're moving our yarn to purl the blues. So it's really simple. You just need to pay attention to what's what and what side you're on. Now here my stitches are switched. So all we're going to do is take those off and flip them around. Very simple. You can use your fingers or your needles. So I'm putting my blue on second, and then moving my red stitch onto my needle. And now we will continue knitting our red because we are on our red side, and purling our blue, which will be on our opposite side. So really you just need to keep track of what side you're on, and if you're using this technique to follow a graph and you're changing colors, just be sure to really pay attention and keep track of what stitch you're on. For this pattern I'm just doing basic stripes to keep it simple, since this is my first time trying this technique. And since you are doing double knitting, you're knitting on both sides, it is going to take double the time. So this scarf did take me a decent amount of time, but I am just so satisfied with the look of it. I think that it is worth it. So here we come to another twisted stitch, And I'm simply just going to pull those both off. You can use your needle or your fingers again, like I mentioned, and just switch the order so that the blue's on first. Here I'm passing it over rather than like switching them. Just wanted to show you another way. It's not too technical though. Alright, so I'm going to finish this row and then show you what to do when you're on the other side of your work. Last stitch of row 1, and remember for the first and last stitch we're knitting both strands of color together to give us a border along our work. Alright, so now we're on row 2 and we're on the opposite, and you can kind of now see what color is going to be on what side. So again, with our first stitch, we're going to knit both colors together. And now we're going to knit our blue yarn and move both strands again as always and purl the red yarn. And I know you're probably not using red and blue yarn, but that's just how I'm going to refer to it. And yeah, that's it. It's pretty simple. You just need to make sure you're knitting the first and last stitch together and you're keeping track of what color is on what side and moving both strands together. And now that I've shown you how to do the basic colors on each side, I will show you how to switch color as if you were doing a stripe and how to add on new yarn, whether that be the same color or a new color. Okay, I finished 8 rows, and here you can see my definite red side and my blue side, and I think it looks really great. I really like this technique. So now I'm going to switch colors because I'm doing stripes here. So as I mentioned, my stripes are going to be 8 rows in length, and I'm still going to knit the first stitch together, as always, so that way our scarf is connected and won't come apart. And now what I'm going to do, because I want the blue stripe to now be on this red side, I am going to knit that red stitch, but I'm going to knit it with our blue yarn. So that way our blue stripe will now be on this side. And then I'm simply going to purl with our red yarn. So just doing the opposite. And when you do any sort of color changes, or if you're following a more complicated graph, it is really important to pay attention to what stitch needs to be what color. So I want the blue on this side, so I'm going to knit with the blue, and the red is on the opposite side, so you purl for the opposite side. I finished my row of color change, and as you can see our colors are now switched. You might not be able to tell until you do one more knit row. And so now all of our colors are on the right side. So I'm simply going to continue with my pattern. And this is what I mean by keeping track. You want to remember that you did that color change so that you know that you now want the red on this side, so that you're knitting the red. And I'm knitting extremely slow for tutorial purposes and seem to be dropping the yarn each time, but I found that once you get going you can really go quick with this and keep the yarn together and just use what you need, if that makes sense, like I did just there. And if you're a continental knitter, you'll probably find that this goes very fast for you. Alright, here I have 3 stripes done. A few color changes I did, and I want to show you how to add in new yarn, whether it be you ran out of yarn or you're changing color. And I'm changing color here, not only so that you can see, but just because that's what I'm doing for my pattern. I'm doing lots of funky colors in this scarf. So let me show you what you do. You are going to grab your new color or your new yarn, and you're simply going to place it over your needle like so. And you're going to knit with both of those strands, just like that. And now we twist our tail over our yarn to lock it in. And what's great with this pattern is that if you move that red tail along with your knitting, it's going to get locked in between your 2 rows of knit, and that way you don't have to worry about sewing it in at the end or cutting it or anything, because that little tail is going to be inside of your work. So I love when you don't have to worry about that at the end. The less tails to sew in, the better. So as you can see, it can be a little fiddly because there are a lot of tails to work with, but it is manageable. So I just wanted to show you what that looked like real quick, and now I'm going to show you how to finish your project. To bind off, we're going to knit both of our colors together for our remaining row, and you can of course use both strands of your yarn, but I accidentally cut one of my strands, so that's okay. I know now for next time. I was thinking I was going to keep going, but I decided to bind off instead. So you're going to knit both of your colors together, just like so, and then when you have 2, you're going to pass that first group of stitches over your second group of stitches, just like a normal bind off, except for you're working with 2 strands of yarn. And you're going to repeat this all the way down. So knit those 2 together, and then pass the first stitch over the next one. And again, you want to use both strands of your colors here, so that way you have a nice edging. Hopefully you enjoyed this double knitting lesson, and sorry that this was more of a technique video rather than a pattern. It's more to teach you the idea of double knitting and get you inspired. I know now that I know how to double knit, there are lots of scarf ideas that I have, different themes you could do like Doctor Who or Harry Potter house scarves. I feel like the possibilities are endless, and I'm really excited to design and graph some of these ideas. So subscribe for more tutorials, thumbs up this video if you enjoyed this technique, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.